Hey, good morning, everybody. It's all coming out now. All the things that people have been saying over the last 2 years, warning people about the effects of lockdowns, masks to some extent, and obviously the V. You know what I mean. I'm not going to say what that actually is because of all the algorithms and so on, but the injections. I posted something on my social media that I saw a couple of days ago. There's a race, a cycling race that happens every year. This time it's not the Tour de France, but it's like the Paris to Nice cycling race. And one day, 18 riders had to stand down and drop out of the race because of mystery illnesses. No one could say what they were. The experts and doctors and media pundits had no idea. I think they do know what caused it, but there we go. And you know what caused it, and I know what caused it. Even mainstream media now is saying in some of these cases where there are heart attacks, myocarditis, that they've been caused by the booster injections. It's not a secret anymore. It's all coming out. It's all there for everybody to see. And Pfizer was one of the companies that made these injections. And just a couple of weeks ago, or last week actually, I think it was, they released documentation that they wanted sealed for 75 years, but the judge in America in the case said, no, you've got to release them all within the next 7 months. So this new document came out that shows 9 pages full of conditions caused by the injections. Now, in any normal circumstance, this will be all over the front pages of every newspaper and all over the top stories at the top of the hour of every television station, but it's nowhere to be seen. No one's even talking about it on the mainstream media. Well, that's no surprise to you and me, because the job of the mainstream media is not to report the news, it is to spin propaganda. And so this is something that is really, really important for everybody to know, and to start to put these people on trial for the fraud, for the injuries, and the deaths that have been caused by the injections. It's not even a secret anymore. So, the mainstream media are not even trying to pretend that this didn't happen anymore. They're just ignoring it, which is just as despicable as what they've done over the last 2 years, where they've tried to spin the opposite narrative and smear anybody who calls or questions the line that these things are safe and effective, safe and effective. I heard so many people for 2 years say it's safe and effective. Clearly, they're not safe. And they're not even effective against the variants that come out, even by their own evidence. They say, which is why you needed 1, and then you needed 2, and then a few months later they said you need 3, and in Israel you need 4. And that was interesting because on that cycling race I talked about, the worst affected team was the Israeli team. There was only 1 cycle rider from Israel left in the race. Because Israel is the most injected and boosted country in the world. Most of them had 4 shots of this stuff, and mortality has gone through the roof. And there's this Wall Street analyst, I think he's called Edwards Dowd, I think that's his name. He's appearing on a lot of free speech and truth media, let's call it that, as opposed to the Lügenpresse. So you're not going to get the truth on the Lügenpresse. You know what I mean? So yeah, he's this very, very clever Wall Street analyst. Used to work for the dark side. Used to work for BlackRock. But he's been analysing everything, and he's said some very, very interesting and poignant things. In young Americans, He's analysed all of this stuff. The increase in mortality in young Americans is equivalent to a Vietnam. That's what he's saying. And in Germany, 1 in 25 people have suffered an injury from the injections. And, this is actually having a real knock-on effect in the real world of finance, because insurance companies are now looking at people, starting to look at people who've been injected and saying, well, we're not going to insure you. And, so all the people that were propagandized and got injections to go on holiday and so on, or to virtue signal, maybe are going to be in a really bad situation because they won't be able to get insurance for certain things. And, it's a terrible situation because young people are dropping all over the place. I mean, Shane Warne, great Australian cricketer, died last week, very, very soon after a booster injection. And so did someone that he spoke about that very morning who died of the same thing. He's 52, and an athlete. This shouldn't be happening. And it's happening not just to him, but to young people all over the place. I mean, this is not normal that so many young people, particularly athletes, are pulling out of competitions, getting heart attacks and dying. And it's because of these things. This should all be all over the news. But it's not, because the news at the moment is Ukraine, 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 Ukraine. And people are suffering in Ukraine. I know that. And people are being displaced from their homes. They're becoming homeless on, a large scale. And that's awful. I'm not going to go into, the ins and outs of Ukraine in this video, because it's very complicated. You can go back 8 years, you can get a certain point of view. You go back 30 years, you get another point of view. You go back to the Holodomor, you get another point of view. You go back 1,000 years to the beginning of Holy Russia, you get another point of view. It's very complicated. So I need a whole other video to talk about this. I mean, I did speak about it a little bit on my last one that I did a few days ago, but there's a lot more to say about it now, because there's a lot more that is becoming apparent that was hidden, every day. So I'll do another video about that later on. But freedom fighters, truth tellers have been fighting this battle for 2 years to wake people up about what these injections are, the devastation of the lockdowns, and people are just sort of waking up. But, some people are just gone back to believing everything the mainstream media is saying again. Look, please, if anything, if you take anything from this video, what have you learned over the last 2 years or 10 years or 20 years? You cannot trust the Western mainstream media. They're propaganda outlets. They're narrative spinners. They don't give you the news. They're there to try to brainwash you into thinking a certain way and acting a certain way. So, look outside the mainstream media for the truth and for what is going on. I look at UK Column. There's the Corbett report. There's a lot of things on Telegram that give you an alternative point of view, Sergeant News and so on. There's InfoWars. There's Banned Video. There's Rebel News, Summit News, all kinds of things. I wouldn't go to the fake alternative, if you know what I mean. I think you know what I mean. I'm not going to say it, but I so want to say it. No, there's two outlets in the UK that are well known, that people look at and they think, oh, they're wonderful. They're alternative. No, they're not. You know what I'm talking about, I think. There you go. And, I wouldn't go for them for truth. I'd go to other places to try to find out what's going on. You're not going to get it from anybody that's regulated by Ofcom. Ofcom, if you don't know, if you're abroad, if you're not in the UK, Ofcom is a communications regulator. So it's what we call a quango. It's a government body, but it's set up to be semi-independent from the government. So they have the power of government, but they're not part of the government. It's just a setup that allows government to control civil society in a way that they shouldn't be doing, because to be honest. Media in the press, if you want a free press and a free media, it shouldn't be regulated. They will take your license away if someone comes on your show and they have a view which is opposite to the mainstream. Not something that is inciting violence or inciting racism, but if someone's got an opinion which goes against the World Health Organization or against the narrative of Big Pharma or the narratives of the military-industrial complex as we have now, then a broadcaster can get taken off the air. They can lose their license. So they have to toe the government line. And most broadcasters in the UK do that very happily and willingly, because they're all woke and they all, they've all got their snouts in the trough, and they all get millions and millions and millions of pounds of government advertising every year. But there's these two that are sort of set up to be slightly, pretending to be outside of the Overton window. And there's a couple of broadcasters on there who really are very good. I won't say any names, but Scottish guy with a beard, he's really good. I like him. And young lad who's training to be a vicar as well. He's good. But a lot of them aren't. So there you go. But there we go. Before I rattle on too much, this video is about the truth is coming out. So we just got to shout this from the rooftops now about how these injections are dangerous and how the people who have been pushing the narrative need to be held to account. We can't let that slip. And we mustn't let the plans go ahead. The World Health Organization are now putting together a treaty called the Pandemic Preparedness Treaty. They want all governments around the world to sign it in the next couple of months. And that would give the World Health Organization sovereignty over nations, over and above their own sovereignty. I mean, they would have jurisdiction. They would be able to overrule nations' laws if they declare an emergency, effectively setting in place a global government. The digital identity system is still rolling out. Just because people aren't talking about it anymore doesn't mean it's not happening. And then, real things are happening in Ukraine, but this is a good cover for them to bury all of the other things they're doing and forging ahead with digital identity, social credit system, which would mean that you'll be cut out of the financial system if you have the wrong opinions, or you say something the government doesn't like, or you don't say something that they require you to say, for example. I mean, we can't have this. So whenever this sort of comes up, any kind of scheme to introduce digital identity, social credit, just say no. We've got to continue with mass non-compliance with all of these things as and when they come up, and keep on fighting. So there you go. I'll stop now because I'm nearly up to 15 minutes. I was only going to talk for 5 minutes, but I wish you a blessed day. God bless you all. And it's difficult times, but let's stand together and find out what the truth is. Keep speaking the truth. God bless.